I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in.
No problem. No problem. I just turned on. So
Okay,
it's
yeah, I
been a
had the.
while. It feels like forever.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I said it feels like forever.
Since
I
we've
don't know why. Since last
since last
Monday,
week.
it just feels like
Yeah, I
forever.
know. I was thinking that there's the telepathy again, telepathy
Mhm.
again.
Yep. 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 So how's
Yeah,
your
no.
week been?
Good. Um, I yeah, let me ask you this:
Okay.
in
Okay.
retirement,
In
here's a
retirement.
chance. Here's a chance for you to help the kid. Uh, in retirement, do you even keep track of a weekend coming up?
Weekends are annoying for me. And this is what I found.
Everybody else is
Okay.
around.
Yes. 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 And I mean, I really like what I do, and that's part of what I want to talk about today.
Good.
But I really like what I do, and I don't get to do it quite as much on the weekend because, like you said, everybody else is around wanting attention or wanting me not to do what I really want to be doing. How about
Yeah.
you? You have the same thing?
Yeah, kind of. Like you just asked how my weekend was, and I don't know because it was just two
Oh,
more days of the week.
okay. Okay. I can relate to that. I really can. Yep. 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 I get to sleep in just a little bit more because Ginger doesn't come um, at 6:45. So I get to sleep in a little bit more. But other than that, so this time next week, you'll be getting things together, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. We won't. We probably would not have left yet, but
No.
um, yeah, we'll leave sometime in the evening to drive to Orlando.
Oh,
Yeah, because
okay.
it's not out of Tampa. Prices out of Tampa were stupid, and it's my fault because I waited too long.
Okay.
But we have a direct flight out of Orlando into Philadelphia, and then leaving Sunday night. And we have a connection for that one again because of prices.
Okay.
Um, I forget where, like Cleveland or Cincinnati or something. Which another reason why I got the direct flight was because of not having to worry about making a connection,
Mhm.
trying to get somewhere for the vacation for the holiday.
Yep.
Um, little less worried about it getting back.
Okay.
But again, we'll be getting back at like 2 in the morning, and then still have a 2 hour drive back to Tampa.
Yeah.
So, lesson learned. And I'm around. Yeah, obviously Thursday's out, and I think it's Saturday night. We have something on my mom's side to
Well,
go to.
Friday, there's a lot. Friday, you might want to. I mean, maybe you have friends that you want to visit and so forth, but if not,
Everybody moved
um,
away. You know, we're trying to
Big day.
talk about like a class reunion in 2025 for 30 years,
Mhm. Yeah.
and there's nobody in Boyertown.
Mm.
And the biggest critique from like Chris Schul, who I told you about, says hi. Um, Randy Schleshman was
I
that
remember.
for all of us that actually still have family there, we're not
Hmm.
going to have time to go to a class reunion over Thanksgiving or Christmas. And
Hmm.
that's what I think the 20 or 25-year Phil had tried to organize it, thinking that everybody was going to be home,
Hmm.
during those holidays, which is probably correct, but that doesn't mean we're going to have time to go to a class reunion yet, too.
Right.
We're
Right.
going to have
Right.
both
Right.
sides, mom's side and dad's side, and whatever of other family to
Yeah.
visit, and perhaps a spouse and whatever else. So, and I agree with that. It's probably either make the special trip or don't.
Yeah. 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 Time.
Yeah,
I think you talked about that in an essay. that you wrote.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Uh,
Well,
is that the is that the oh, I forget who I quoted this time. Was
is
that
it
the Steve
what?
Jobs?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I
No,
thought we
I
talked about that. I thought we talked about that a little bit
sure.
at the for the first episode
Yeah,
to debrief a little bit from the election. I mean, I haven't heard from anybody since last Tuesday. And I guess we all kind of uh, were in some sort of state of recovery from the
yeah,
intensity, from the intensity of it. And you talked about it too. Now, there were some discussions I had with friends over this week that, said, oh my God, I can't believe that the results turned out the way they did in Boyertown because in neighboring districts, they're up in arms about Moms for Liberty and threw them out. And
yep,
there was even some national attention on MSNBC about one of the surrounding districts here in Pennsylvania that had their fill of, Moms for Liberty and changed up everything. So surrounding us, surrounding Boyertown, there was a lot of change, but not in Boyertown.
they also got Moms for Liberty earlier.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, I know from living in Colorado that coming back to Boyertown is going back in time. It's a little bit delayed.
Yeah,
But I wanted to say something. You called something. Now I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, well. Yes, so other
when you
districts
say
are a little bit
when you
different than
say I
Boyertown.
called something, do you mean like
You
I?
call Oh, I remember. You called it. I mean, when you kind of predicted, at least in my mind, that Brad would be successful in his campaign. And he's the only one of the six who made it. Now, he's a hometown boy. I mean, his dad taught, people know the name and probably feel comfortable. They probably did not know, and the others were probably not born and raised in Boyertown. I can't remember anymore. I should, but I don't. Um, anyway, I called it.
Piccioni was not. I don't think that Hook was either.
Yeah, I really don't think they may have been and I should remember this, but I don't. They may have been raised in surrounding districts, Daniel Boone or Upper Perk or something like that. But I think Brad was the only one that graduated from Boyertown.
Yeah,
And I think it makes a difference. It always has made a difference. I think it allowed me to get a job back in Boyertown when I came back from Colorado because I was from here. They knew me.
yeah.
So it matters. For good or for bad, it seems to matter. But let's talk a little bit about how you debriefed, shall we say, from the intensity, like you just said a few minutes ago. Um, you spent a weekend researching Jessica Skelton. I mean, that
Yeah.
was pretty high intensity week getting ready for, your interviews with the candidates and so forth. So I would guess that, once it was all done and over, that the energy from that had to dissipate somehow. And you took a walk with the dog,
Yeah,
right?
that was one of them. That was one. I still have not been to the gym, and that's having negative effects. I'm seeing gravity take over. The chest is becoming a stomach, and things like that. But yeah, I wanted to get. I don't. I think my biggest lesson learned, if I'm going to help in any way with my hometown, is that I, all of us got the mass distribution of information. internet radio started way too late.
Right.
Um, my
Right.
best night with Yergz Radio was the Friday night that I interviewed Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
That was immediately succeeded by the Monday that I gave that report on Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, Pennsylvania, I can see where listeners come from in real time because it's, with an IP address and it's a connection. So I see that in real time as opposed to a radio station that does not see their terrestrial listeners. Since then,
Mm-hmm.
I've had nobody from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
When during that series of interviews, I've had people in Philadelphia, as far west as Ephrata, and as far north as Allentown.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells me that some of the media connections I wrote to and forwarded the information to were listening, as well as other school districts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they weren't all from Boyertown,
Mm-hmm.
as much as we would have liked them to be, or at least to have those numbers from Boyertown. They weren't all
Mm-hmm.
from Boyertown because the GPS on it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I just,
Well, I'm just
I'm thinking
hopeful that
about,
they continue, because with your offer to help, get word out about the issues that are going on in the district, and hopefully they will take you up on that and, continue trying to publicize what's going on and get the word out, positive or negative, whatever it is.
yeah,
I'm hopeful. But like I said, I haven't heard from anybody since last week. So we'll see what happens.
I
But
suspect, well,
more to the point, you had talked about going for a dog walk, and and coming back into the house, and Steve Jobs' poster hit you in the face,
yeah,
and
oh, yeah.
inspired a piece of writing. Now, Jobs' poster, remind me, said exactly what?
I'll pull it up because it's pretty easy. It's right here. It's on my one desktop, and it's part of this. What I do is I have screensavers. I have a bunch of inspirational photos like that that have quotes from famous people, and I
Mhm.
use them as Microsoft rotates them through your desktop, and then also I've always used them as screensavers. Um, my favorite things in life don't cost any money. It's really clear that the most precious resource we all have is time. And of course, he
Yeah,
said that after he learned that he had cancer.
right, right. And he is, perhaps you read his biography as I did. And he had some really, what do you say? I think he forgot that from time to time during the course of his career. He
Yeah.
was certainly dedicated. He was certainly inspired. And I can remember, he, and maybe we'll talk about this in another session, but he changed so many people's lives
Oh, yeah.
with, with what he did. Um, I know Macintosh computers, changed the life of Sue Bebeck, our gallery director. When she discovered that, she, discovered it and immediately learned what it was all about and made a career out of that. I remember when Leslie Misko's husband told me that his son Sean bought the first iPhone, Sean's first iPhone. And Bob came in and said, I really need one of those. It's so cool. And he proceeded to tell me all the things Sean had shared with him that the phone could do. And I can remember thinking to myself, who needs that, right? That's really something. But then my son at some point decided that I should no longer use a flip phone And so he went to the store with me and made sure that I got myself an iPhone. And I can remember thinking, this is more than I need. But God, I'm addicted.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
It,
know. I mean, it's just so wonderful. And I have a friend, who was belaboring the fact that they cost so much. The iPhones cost so much. And I said,
right.
well, it's a phone, it's a camera, it's a GPS, it's a flashlight.
Yeah.
It does so many different things. I mean, it's the internet. It's everything. So, Steve Jobs was not known to be the nicest human being in the world, from my understanding and from my reading
No.
of his biography. And so, he like you and me, but at a higher level, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to. I shouldn't. I
Well,
shouldn't phrase it like that.
I've
But
got,
I mean, he was obsessed with his work. I mean, he was definitely. It was all about that and nothing more. And stepped on some folks who were important people to him along the way, from what I understand and from what I've read. And so,
yep.
you know, it's important for us perhaps to learn from him, even though it took him a while, maybe a little bit longer, hopefully, than it takes us to realize that, the time we have is the most precious thing we have,
Yeah,
and the people in
absolutely.
our lives, and the dogs in our lives, right?
And the dogs, puppies. Yeah, I mean, he might
Definitely
have been an
dogs, right?
asshole, he might have been a bit of an asshole, and in all actuality, he was. And I think he kind of
Yeah,
realized that. And while it's still fiction, there's truth to it, and that's the movie starring Michael Fassbender, called Steve Jobs. And
yep,
at the end, after having denied his daughter Lisa his whole life, they're
yep.
having a conversation on a rooftop in a parking garage, and she asks him, "Why did you say you're not my father?" And kind of almost on the verge of crying, he replies back, "I'm poorly made. Like everything is a product that's coming off an assembly line." But it was still a heartfelt
Okay,
response, and it was
yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
realization that right before he goes on stage, he brings his daughter back downstairs, and the movie is in 3 acts, and each one is a product launch. And the final product launch, he right before he goes on stage, he brings her backstage to watch from the side, which is something she's always wanted to do her whole life. And he pulls out of his pocket. He says, "Do you remember that drawing you made on the first Mac when you were a little girl?" And she shakes her head, "No." And he pulls out of his pocket a paper copy of that drawing and says, "I do." And he hands it to her. So while
mm,
he's been an asshole, some part of him still realized there's this portion that's got to be a normal human being. And,
mm,
maybe some of these things, here we go, maybe some of these things happen to him for a reason. And
mm.
um, he had other kids too. But I guess she was the most famous because of the most controversial. But yeah, he's definitely. I've Friends of mine have told me that I'm intimidating, and I'm like,
I
why? How?
understand. Yeah,
And
folks have
so,
said the same about me, yourself
and
included.
yeah, I've said that about you. Uh,
Yes, you
I've
have.
said that about you actually. Um, so I
Yes, you
kind of
have.
get. You remember? That was the exact words I used. Uh,
Yes, you have. Yeah.
so I kind of get him. And one of the other
Mhm.
quotes that he's got, I've got them pulled up on my desktop now. I mean, I'll run through them all real quick. show you just how much he's actually an inspirational person. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do.
Mhm.
Here's a favorite. This is actually on my phone. If you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Well, I
The only way
remember
to do
at
great
one
work.
point, this is really what?
No, go ahead.
Well, I remember at one point, my husband, who is had his own business, graphic design
Yeah.
and advertising, and now marketing. But I remember him having a chat with a friend of his who was having issues with being a boss, okay, a leader, okay.
Yep.
And they decided that they were going to go sell ice cream. They were going to go, find a Dairy Queen franchise and sell Dairy Queen ice cream because they were so tired of all the frustrating events and demands and criticisms and unhappiness that their employees brought to them. So, yeah, so I
Yeah.
get that. I get that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about also was our buddy Craig sent us an essay about
Yeah.
work that, that kind of fit in with what you had kind of discovered or reflected on relative to Steve Jobs' quote. And Craig's essay, and I thought this was kind of interesting. He talks about the distinction between having a job, a career, and a calling. And he in his essay, through whatever research or reading he has done, he found that people with jobs, as opposed to a career and a calling,
Yeah.
um, jobs that offer neither status or high pay, they seem satisfied with them. While other people who work at jobs are generally well respected and pay quite well, are not. He goes on
Yeah.
with his research to say those who work at a calling seem to be unaffected by low pay or low status because they hold different set of values, or because of the nature of the work itself, or a belief in their own importance as someone who does something, pardon me, important. And he concludes this, and maybe it's true for us. The more obviously one's work benefits other people, the less one is likely to be paid for it. And further in his
It's
essay, he goes on to talk about how we tend to identify with our job. And he talks about, Craig talks about going to a party and somebody wanted to know what he does. And to be contrary, kind of, Craig said, well, I like to listen to music, I write a lot. What they were after, of course, was his occupation. And so he played with them for a while to tell him other things about himself rather than what he does. Because the point being that so often we identify with our occupation rather than other, perhaps more important, more significant, more valuable parts of who we are and what we do.
yeah.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
thought it was an interesting essay. And that particular
No,
essay,
he's
by the
spot
way,
on
was
too.
published this morning on the Boyertown Area Expression. So if anybody's interested in reading Craig's thoughts in his own words, check in to the Boyertown Area Expression. So anyway,
Yeah, I
what do
saw
you
that.
think?
I didn't get to read the whole thing yet.
What was that?
I
I'm
saw
sorry.
that he was the entry today. I didn't get to
Yeah.
read the whole thing, but yeah,
Well, those
and
were
he's
just.
right.
Mhm.
When I was at the Secret Service, one of the reasons why I retired was not because I was eligible. If I would have been, and there's plenty of got most of the upper level bosses are past eligible for retirement, but they're an assistant director or they're a special agent in charge or there's something way up in upper management that they're still
Mhm.
developing a resume for when they finally do retire, or they don't want to leave the six-figure salary right away.
Mhm.
For me, I was a senior agent. I did a lot of cool shit in my career, and I was managing COVID supplies. Why
Oh,
was I not teaching younger agents?
right.
Why was I not doing some other actual leadership position? It's not because I'm a screw up. I'm not. I knew that. And so I'm like, I'm going to go where I'm going to be appreciated.
Yeah.
And then with, callings and careers and what have you versus a job, Zach has a job at Dollar General, I think it is. It's like a basic,
Okay.
cheap grocery store. And for the first time in his life, he's getting money. And he likes that. And he's
Mm-hmm.
able to buy drinks at the skating rink for his buddies who don't have a job and stuff like that. And I love that about him.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't seem to want to become a manager at the store to make more money or to
Mm-hmm.
have more responsibility, to do something better because he sees how it can be done better. He's just, as Craig said, satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 podcasts, 7 YouTube channels, and a radio show, and the radio station that the radio show and some of the other podcasts are on, including yours and other podcasters. I don't get paid a dime.
Mm-hmm.
I pay to do all that.
And tell me you like it.
And I get up first thing in the morning, come into this room. I go to bed at 1:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been on my jet ski since April.
Let me ask you something. Are you padding your resume through all this work?
Oh, fuck, no.
I didn't think so. So
I'm
would you
gonna
consider
I'm gonna
would
die
you
in this
consider
house.
what you're do- would you consider what you're doing a calling? Something you feel called to do for the benefit of other people?
I was when Pop Bush, my dad's stepfather, got a new stereo system in at 500 East Philadelphia Avenue, where his chiropractor's office was. Caddy corner
Okay.
from Tallarico's.
Okay.
That big mansion. I think it was Kenny Nice who used to own it before they did, and then it became. It was Dr. William Bush was his chiropractor's office that was on the first floor. And then I'm brain farting on the doctor that bought it when he retired. But that guy just
Anyway,
retired.
but anyway.
But it's right on the main street in Boyertown. Anyway, when he got a new stereo system up in there, second floor where they lived, he gave me his old one. And I played disc jockey.
Did you really?
I didn't know what talk radio was then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had nothing to hypothesize on anyway. I was playing Huey Lewis and Thriller and ZZ
Mm-hmm.
Top, and
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to not play them back to back, but that's pretty much all I had. I, I was like a top 40 station. I was playing the same songs over and over. And then when I got into college, did I not tell you this?
Uh, no, this is all new.
When I got into college, um, my speech class, my public speaking class, we had to do some sort of project. And my
Mm-hmm.
project was we started at Penn State Berks for the day. We started, I forget what the call letters were that we used, but we started a student radio station. We couldn't get FCC licensing on short notice, so we didn't do that. But we broadcast through PA systems through the
Mm-hmm.
student center.
Okay.
And I was like a Howard Stern wannabe. And then when I got to University Park for I was actually a 5 years, so year 3, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually, according to the Daily Collegian, the daily student newspaper, the Howard Stern of Penn State, and
Oh no.
I had a 3-day a week radio show at the Student Hall's radio station.
So you really have evolved
Oh
from
yeah,
wow. No, I did not know. I did not know you had all those activities. So what you're doing now is just a natural evolution of what you enjoyed doing as a kid. That's so cool. Now,
Yep.
are you still wanting to be Howard Stern?
So we had this conversation. I made some off the wall comment about politics, but it's not something that Anderson Cooper or even Dan Bongino would have said. It was kind of Howard Stern like. And I forget. It might have been Glenn Jackson from the Misfits, but somebody called me the Howard Stern of politics. And I was like, it was actually right when you and I just started.
Mm-hmm.
And oh no, it was my one former neighbor who moved away. Tim was visiting. And I told him about, I'm paired up with one of my junior high English teachers, and, we started another podcast. And he goes, "Is she black?" And I'm like, "No, she's not Robin Quivers. And I'm not Howard. We are co-hosts."
Now, tell me what. Okay, tell me what that means to you. What does Howard Stern? How is that defined? Just by
What?
curse words or
Oh God,
sexual
no.
innuendo
Nope.
or
Nothing like that. He
okay, tell me what
changed
that means.
for he got paid back in 2006, almost 20 years ago. Back in 2006, he was paid $500 million to leave terrestrial radio and go to Sirius XM.
I remember it well because one of the things that, and I blush to remember this now, and my former students will probably laugh, but I was not a Howard Stern fan.
I couldn't picture you one. No,
I was
not.
not a,
I no. I could not picture Mrs. Stahl as a
there
Howard
you
Stern
go.
fan.
There you
Jane,
go.
yes,
Oh no, really?
yeah, yeah.
We should
I
talk
think
about
you would. I
that.
mean, look at how you sit and giggle at me swearing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's
Well, yeah. Well,
uh,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
you-
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
release. You don't have to punish
It
me
is.
anymore.
No, I do not. I had to maintain some sort of moral standard. And I can remember ranting about Howard Stern. I remember writing to Howard Stern and sharing what I had written with my students, scolding him for not upholding what? Courtesy, morality. I mean, I had trouble back in the day when I was teaching. My poor children, that's all I have to say. Um, I had trouble with Friends, the TV show Friends, because they were all sleeping with each other, and I decided that was not appropriate. Okay, that was not what was good for Western civilization. It was the decline of Western civilization. So I was pretty stern,
Yeah,
pun intended.
yeah, exactly.
Pun intended. But I mean, I've learned a lot about him just from, I shouldn't say that. I listened to him talk on Stephen Colbert or on different talk shows and whatever. And I have a lot of respect for him. He was the king of all media, right?
And that's what I
Isn't
that's what
that
I
what
used
he
at
was
Penn
known
State.
for?
When the Daily
Yeah, he was
Collegian
the king of
called me
all
a
media.
Howard Stern wannabe, I said I'm the king of state college media, and that
There
pissed
you
them off
go.
even more.
There you go. Okay, so let me get back to my question then. So, what is it that makes him and you the king of media?
Honesty. One of the things he said when, and you alluded to it, was classy, or I forget exactly what word you just used, but about what he talks about on the radio. He says, "I live in a world where priests rape young boys and drugs run free like the river gangs, the gangs wherever that is. Now you tell
Mhm.
me what I'm supposed to talk about on the radio."
Wow.
And he's right. You know, there's I just saw on Facebook a family portrait of Tsar Nicholas, the last Tsar of Russia,
Okay.
who was assassinated by the Bolsheviks. And it's alluding to like what DeSantis wants to do down here in Florida, and Moms for Liberty wants to do everywhere, and that is whitewash or change history. And the caption to this nice family portrait reads, "History is what it is. Sometimes it offends you, sometimes you celebrate it, but you can never change it."
Mm-hmm.
And that nice family picture was all wiped out in a basement. Or the family in that family picture were all wiped out in a basement. And that's history. And what he's done for media, the through his career of having been fired for having done something outrageous, got him hired at a bigger station. It's actually being taught in business schools as the Howard Stern principle. In government, so often somebody will be disciplined because of having done something bad. 6 months later, they're promoted. And we have, and again, excuse my language, but we have a saying called "fuck up, move up."
Wow.
And that's rampant in government. But that's a business, model that's being taught in business schools is his. But also look how strong he had to be. And I just talked about this, I think, on my own radio show. There was a time when no celebrity would touch him to come on his show, except for roughly 4, 5 I can think of. One, as we talked about, Andrew Dice Clay.
Okay.
You and I talked about that on an episode. The late Sam Kinison was outrageous, both of whom are equally as outrageous as Howard, so you would see them going there. But
Mm-hmm.
another guy that didn't give a shit was Arnold Schwarzenegger, was one of his original celebrity guests to come in the studio and talk with him. Then William Shatner. And then there was a
Wow.
guy they just kept busting on and making fun of until they realized he was a fan. And that was George Takei, Mr. Sulu.
No kidding.
His Takei's catchphrase is "Oh my," and they were making fun of that. And he
Yes.
says it all the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
Yes.
somebody said, we just got a letter. He's a fan of yours. And so they call him, because that's the only way you could, get somebody like that. They didn't have Skype and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They call him, and they've been buddies ever since. He's a friend of the show, as they call it.
So, what then are you doing to, shall I say it?
Good.
What are you doing to fuck up to move up in your radio show?
Not
If you're using the Howard Stern principle.
uh, all of the political podcasters sit there in a suit and tie, with short hair. The only one that really doesn't is my arch enemy, Dan Bongino, formerly from Fox News, who also is in a tight muscle T-shirt. But he, as David Beckmeyer and you and I would talk about, is into the anger porn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do the anger porn. I
Do
give
you
tough
see
love.
yourself then? Do you see yourself then able, since that is the principle of success? Do you see then, if you're not into anger porn, do you see yourself as able to be successful in modern culture?
Not right away. I won't be an overnight success, because nobody wants that now.
No, they don't.
But like we all agreed when we talked with David, they need it desperately.
Gotcha.
And that's not me, because another thing I don't do is I don't tell you who to vote for. I
Right.
said during the series of interviews that I'm not going to endorse any of you. It's not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell people who scares me, like Jessica. But if you
Mm-hmm.
want to vote for her, knock yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that about any Moms for Liberty candidate or anybody that has to call themselves a patriot just on their social media page.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in foreign countries doing things that aren't for the radio. And I don't use that word to describe me. And I know people who tower over me in accomplishments like that and don't even think to call themselves a patriot.
Okay.
So, rambling. Um,
Yeah, how did we get here? So we were talking about being successful, and I
oh,
think
yeah.
you got to the point. I think you got to the point. You answered my question about Howard and what he's about and how he got to be there. And I see him as someone who used anger porn
Mm-hmm.
to become successful.
But he
And
did
I
it
think
before it was
that's
cool.
pardon
He
me?
he did it before it was cool,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that's
He was
that's why it's okay
outrageous.
for him.
Yeah, outrageous then. And I don't listen to him, maybe you do, but is it still the same tone? Is it still
No,
the same
no, and that's why
energy?
that's why I actually just put him in that file of screensavers, because
Okay.
he is being, and I just have the picture and kind of sort of the ass end thing of it, but he is being criticized by a bunch of people. Um, Hij, there he is. He's being criticized by a bunch of people for being too woke,
Okay.
and and what I would criticize him for is the fact that now every celebrity wants to come on a show, and he doesn't do bits with Fart Man, the superhero that he created, who had magical farts or super powered farts.
Okay.
He doesn't make prank phone calls anymore. That's what I always loved about him. But so now
That's what
he
my
says about
students
being
loved
woke.
about him.
What's that? Sorry.
That's what my students loved about him too.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But
And
now
Mrs.
he says
Dalton.
about being accused of being woke, that I
Mhm.
support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine. Dude, call me woke as you fucking want. I'm not for stupidity. I am a woke motherfucker, and I love it.
Okay.
And and so yeah, he still has the language, obviously, but
Hmm.
he changed broadcasting for better or worse. Yeah, he put a huge dent in broadcasting. And yeah, I mean, there's a clip that I found on YouTube from his movie Private Parts, where after he got hired, and this was actually an issue that WNBC had, they hired him just based on the numbers. He had these outrageous numbers when he was in DC, and they said, "Oh, bring him here,
Yep.
bring him to the
Yep.
flagship of radio."
Yep.
And they had no idea what he did. Now they've hired him, they've got him in a long-term contract, and they find out, he's this potty mouth.
Hmm.
And so they're trying to fire him. They're trying to have him breach the contract, and he's not doing it. So they take all kinds of polls like, what is it about this guy? Why should we embrace him? Should we? They're trying to figure it out. And they get a poll. The guy that orchestrated it is saying it to the program director. He goes, the average radio listener listens for, I think it's like 18 minutes. The
Hmm.
average Howard Stern fan listens for an hour and 18 minutes.
Yep.
He says, why do they listen so long? Answer most commonly given, I want to see what he'll say next.
Yeah.
But what about the people who hate Stern? Good question. The average Stern hater, 2 hours and 30 minutes. But if they hate him, Paul Giamatti did this role so well. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
It's his dad was the former president of the National League and commissioner of Major League Baseball.
Okay.
Bartlett Giamatti, the guy who suspended Pete Rose.
Okay.
And he's been, Paul Giamatti's been in the movie Sideways. Merlot, nobody drinks Merlot. That guy. So he goes, but if they hate him, why do they listen? Answer most commonly given, I want to see what he'll say next.
Well, that's Trump.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that he learned from Howard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that my dad warned me about decades and decades ago when the hippies were the thing. And he saw the whole breakdown of civility as a result of that. It's it's an organization. It's against the man. It's against standards. It's against organization. It's against what? Authority. It's an anti-authoritarian thing.
And
So that's what we're in the middle of right now.
that's what's crazy
And
about Trump is that he's all about authority.
but he is all about being against the establishment, against the authority. He is telling people to, he blows smoke in everybody's faces.
Yeah.
And calls them fools, which is not what you're supposed to do. So but he is the fascist, he is the authoritarian, and people don't see it coming, just like they didn't they just don't see it coming.
David made a great point. David made a great point.
Which is?
I said to somebody that the people who are left still following Donald Trump are the people who are just flat out not too bright. And those are the people we as a government need to be helping in the first place.
Right.
David said, that's not it. There's some very smart people who are still behind Donald Trump. And because they're that intelligent and they've legitimized his candidacy so well, it's going to be nearly impossible to talk them out of it.
Because he provides them with power. Yes. Fortune. Yes.
It can't be fortune. He had one of the worst economies. If you actually look at real stats, not what he says on Fox News.
But it's the tax break for billionaires, right?
But that's not the common man. Exactly. That's one more reason to vote against him.
You're talking about the super smart people.
Oh,
who are probably
yeah.
That's what we're talking about. No, he's not. No, he's not going to help the common man. No, but the common man will love him because of his style. People, my friend Bob Wood always says that people want to be Donald Trump. They want to be quote unquote successful in business, have several wives, gilded toilets. I mean, that's what people see, and that's what they think they want, and so he is, in their minds, heroic.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we are.
Oh,
probably.
I don't think you want to know.
For this episode. Am I right?
We started recording right when you signed on. I changed that so we don't have to worry about, and I can just edit out stuff in the beginning. But we've been going on this one for a good 50 minutes.
You're kidding.
No.
Wow.
This is a fast one.
We're bad.
And I looked at it at one point. We were at like 40 minutes, and I'm like, well, it sounds like she's wrapping up. Okay. But then I got rambling.
Yeah. Then you've
And
got, yeah.
it's all. I was just watching a video on YouTube last night about, the common pet peeves of podcast listeners.
Oh. Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, we're not doing so
I know
good.
what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. You're ready for us to be done, and then we're not done. So,
Yes.
I'm Jane Stoll.
And I'm Yergz.
And this is Both Sides Now.
We'll see you again.